Peninah Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the next hour, we'll run through all the key business news stories you need to know about from across the continent and beyond as well. Let's start the program, as we always do, though, with a run through the markets here for you. So Nigeria's main index is of particular interest for us. It's been on a steady decline for the last 12 months and a bit more. And today's closing number really doesn't do much to recoup what's been lost over that period of time, much less so far in 2019. At today's closing numbers, the main index is down 29.4% in the last 12 months. That's the worst among all the markets that we do track here on Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up tonight. Tanzania's president urges the central bank to start buying gold from the country's mines to boost reserves. Saudi Arabia plans to cut oil exports by 10% this month. And a young Ugandan entrepreneur is cashing in on bamboo in the cycling world. All right, then let's start tonight in the business of insurance, but on a more national level. The African Union is appealing to a lot more African nations to not just ratify, but also join and pay premiums to the African Risk Capacity Agency. That's an AU agency set up in 2012, and it's designed to help African governments improve their ability to plan, prepare for, and respond to expensive and extreme weather events. It acts essentially like an insurance scheme. Countries pay premiums into it, and then they can put in claims for funds when natural disasters like floods or drought or something else of that sort does strike. So far, 34 countries have signed up to it, but only 7 have ratified the deal. Here's part of that conversation between CGTN's Colette Wanjohi and the Director General of the AU Africa Risk Capacity.
The typical cycle is that there is a disaster, and then the disaster is declared. We move to an appeal. By the time the resources are mobilized, you have 6 to 9 months that have lapsed. During that time, people have finished their reserves, they eat their seeds, they sell the tools, and then sometime even the animals, the cows. And what happened at the end of the 9, 10, 12 months, they don't have even seeds to plant again. They don't have any capital to be able to sell like cows or something else in order to buy new seeds or new implements.
What are some of the models that the African Union, Africa Risk Capacity is offering as solutions to African member states so that they can become prepared before disasters strike?
A more market approach level is insurance. Is to say, why don't we all have a pool? What does it mean? It means we can design an insurance system that allows us, all of us, to pull our effort together. Because we have an insurance that is a collective one, it means each one will be paying less. Simply because going to reinsurance will pay a lower reinsurance, and that will impact our individual premiums down. Secondly, we learn from each other. And by learning from each other, we can also drive that cost of insurance lower.
And what is the response so far from the AU member states after giving them the solution of financing disaster preparedness themselves?
You have about 19 countries that have an MOU with ARC in 4 years only, and trying to move towards insurance because there is a process of capacity building, of public policies discussions. You need to move with the country and prepare them to define themselves their risk profile. Yes, since we started 4 years ago, countries have subscribed up to $60 million of insurance, of policy. And today, ARC has paid to its member state over $36 million as a payout. And this has allowed to save over 2.5 million people that were affected by drought, and more than 1 million cattle saved. So this is a concrete example that if we are well organized, we have the right solidarities in place, we have the good mechanism, we have the good technology, because this is all based on modeling, on climate modeling with satellite data, cutting edge technology, allowing us to work with precision.
Over in East Africa, Tanzania's president says the country's central bank, that's the Bank of Tanzania, should start buying up the country's gold output from its mines as part of efforts to not just curb smuggling, but also to build up its reserves in order to ostensibly stabilize its currency. Now, the mining sector accounts for roughly 4.8% of the East African nation's GDP, but the overall value of many a mining project in Tanzania has fallen in the wake of repeated government interventions. Now, it wasn't 100% clear if President Magufuli intended to buy up all the country's gold miner Acacia over a $190 billion tax bill. Now, for context, the country's total GDP in 2017 was barely $52 billion. The tax claim has severely limited the London-listed company's operations in Tanzania. All right, then let's get you the latest on this particular story. Daniel Kijo joins us on the line from Dar es Salaam. Daniel, by the end of June last year, Tanzania had about $5.5 billion in foreign currency reserves. That gives us about 5.5 months of import cover. From that perspective, is there any immediate need for reserve levels to go up?
Hello, Rama. Firstly, it's important to note that as the economy expands, the country is continuously growing its forex reserves organically through different trade or business activities with the rest of the world. For instance, when tourists come into the country, they bring in foreign exchange, or maybe through foreign direct investments in the country, etc., etc. So that growth will be as a natural result of having good policy that encourage these activities. Now, in Tanzania's case, many experts are of the view that when it comes to foreign exchange reserves, more is always better, and that the current levels now are comfortable. They're considered good levels that will provide sufficient import cover when needed. So there is maybe not necessarily a crisis, but it's always good to have more than less.
Assuming that this plan is put to boost reserves by buying up local gold levels is actually put in place, how would it even work? And what quantity of gold will the Bank of Tanzania be able to buy?
So, Rama, currently the forex reserves are in foreign currencies, the US dollar. Now, that sort of aggregates all the foreign currency that were collected. So some parts of the total reserve are in pounds or in the yen or other, a number of different strong, stable international currencies. So when you start now talking about reserving in gold and bullion, what you're saying is that now we're going to add another form of not necessarily currency, but another form of backing up your foreign exchange reserves, plus in addition to the dollars. Now, this would mean buying gold using reserve dollars that we currently already have. So then the government would look at the chunk of the total forex reserve and take some of that and convert it into gold by buying from either local or international bullion markets at the market price, which now is about $41,000 per kilogram of gold. So you're talking about bullion or gold that is the best in the world, very pure, a very good quality gold that is the international standard. So this is what the process would be. Although it has not been stipulated exactly how much of the current reserve, the $5.4 billion that Tanzania would sort of convert into gold.
Right then, but all that being said, at the end of the day, the question then becomes, where's the money going to come from for this gold purchase scheme? Is the money going to come out of the reserves being held by the Bank of Tanzania? Is the Treasury going to step in for that? And also, importantly, what mining companies are going to benefit from this?
So, like I said, the process of buying the gold will come from the existing foreign exchange reserve, the $5.4 billion. Now, it will, what the key point to explain here is that the gold cannot come from local international producers. Then that will be held in the central bank or an area they see fit. So if a local market does not have the required amount or quality that they seek, they're also free to seek a supply globally. Now that reserve will be partly then in gold, the final reserves will partly then be gold and some in US dollars. So this move is seen by many as a way for the administration to sort of diversify its reserve holdings. Again, like I said, the key point here to note is that the gold needs to be bought, not mined, or added, and then added into the central bank savings reserves.
Right then, one last question for you, Daniel. The government has often said it wants mining companies in Tanzania to list in the stock exchange in Dar. But if the mining entities don't list, what measures will the government take in order to compel these companies to do so?
So far, we have one mining company that has been listed, but it's a sort of cross-listing, meaning that it was listed on the London Stock Exchange and then listed on our Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange. As you know, Ramah, mines or mining companies are big capital-intensive companies, and certainly may not be the kind that have huge capital gains immediately, or that there's a lot of dividends paid out in sort of short span. Now, especially because being such a capital-intensive company, most of the money that is realized is put back into the business for digging new pits or invested more heavily in sort of CapEx-type projects. So what is important is that the market itself needs to understand this issue regarding the mining industry and the kind of companies they would be. A share of a gold mining company is very different from a share of a fast-moving consumer good company. Even our market cap can be seen too small. For instance, when telcos were facing a similar situation and legally regulated to be listed, Vodacom suffered because locally, there wasn't a strong muscle. So because 65% of our stock market investors are foreign investors. So the government might have to open up its doors beyond Tanzania, create incentives. But as far as I know, there's no clear law that compels them legally or has legal ramification if they don't, list. So it's a situation where the market itself needs to mature as well.
We'll leave it there for the time being. That's Daniel Kijo there live, of course, on the line from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Right, then let's start our company news wrap in the commodity sector as well, but this time in South Africa. Sibanye-Stillwater has announced that its bullion output in 2018 will actually be a lot lower than forecast. That comes after nearly half of employees down their tools since mid-November in a wage strike that has left at least 4 employees so far in its gold operations in South Africa dead. Gold producers in Africa's most industrialized economy have argued that above inflation wage hikes have added to the cost burden of the industry. S&P Global Ratings has warned that it could downgrade MTN's debt if the mobile operator increases its relative exposure to Nigeria. Now, the ratings agency adds that it's unlikely to downgrade the network operator in the next 90 days. It did affirm MTN's BB Plus long-term issuer credit ratings. In the 6 months ending in June, the telecoms giant generated revenues of $1.24 billion from Nigeria. Compare that to $1.5 billion from South Africa. The taxi-hailing firm Uber has unveiled in Nairobi, the Kenyan capital, its specialized Uber service, Uber Assist, that basically is designed to help riders with disabilities and the elderly get access to the city and move around with ride-hailing services a lot more conveniently. Nairobi is the 3rd city in Africa where Uber Assist has been rolled out, after Johannesburg in South Africa and Cape Town too, where the feature was launched in August 2017. And finally, the car maker Ford has announced plans for a major shake-up of its operations in the UK and mainland Europe. Now, the move is expected to lead to thousands of job losses across the region. The firm will also be expanding its commercial vehicle business, which will be one of 3 new divisions being created, along with passenger vehicles and imported vehicles. Ford does hope that the changes will enable it to achieve a 6% operating margin in Europe. That's a run through your company headlines. It's time for a break. You're watching Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up next. We'll be looking at the reasons why South Africa's business confidence index fell in December. And Egypt has scrapped all tariffs on vehicles assembled in Europe. All that and more is coming up shortly.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just a Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Back to the program. You're watching Global Business Africa. Now, South Africa's Business Confidence Index fell in December. The SACI Business Confidence Index slipped by 0.9 points to a reading of 95.2 from 96.1 points in November. Now, the data comes amid the World Bank's latest economic outlook, which showed that the country is expected to be one of the worst performers this year in sub-Saharan Africa.
I think we could say that we're on the average for the year as such. We started very high at about close to 100, the index, and then it came down to about 95 towards year end. And I think it's moderate and it actually reflects the difficulty of getting the economy going again, and actually to get the business climate more positive, especially on investment and on business confidence.
All right, then let's pass this data in a lot more detail. CGTN's Angelo Coppola is live in Johannesburg. He joins us with more on this story. So, Angelo, 7 of 13 sub-indices in this index, they actually had a negative reading for December. Walk us through the trends in 2018, but just as important, the first quarter outlook from the Chamber.
Well, look, there were two bright lights in those sub-indices that you've just mentioned, new vehicle sales and inflation. And although car sales themselves were down in December, the trend for the year was up, and Downing is quite excited about that. On inflation, he's saying that the Reserve Bank did a reasonable job during the course of the year, and that last hike late in 2018 helped the local currency somewhat. Outside of that, though, the JSE's had to work its way out of a hole that it dug for itself last year. It was around 51,000 points for the year. We also saw foreigners selling bonds and shares by approximately $9 billion. That's 125 billion rand. That was for the 11 months to 2018. So because of that, quarter one doesn't look that positive either. It's all about policy certainty and the role that business is going to be playing going forward. And Downing sees the BCI, that's the Business Confidence Index, tracking sideways in Q1. What happens after that, of course, all depends on the election outcomes. Ramah?
Right, and of course, I'm sure this is going to be cold comfort for investors, but at least the JSE is not down to the same extent as it is with the NSE in Kenya or Nigeria. Saki also described the business climate in South Africa as being quite hesitant. That's the word they used, hesitant. Is this mainly about the 2019 elections, or are there other factors at play here?
Look, so in part it's about the elections in May. You'll be aware, of course, that the ruling party is currently on a big jamboree in KwaZulu-Natal with President Ramaphosa and ex-President Zuma almost standing side by side to present that perception of being a united front. Meanwhile, though, the local and international investors are looking for strong political leadership, and they're not seeing that right now. Many, I'm told, want to see government providing an enhancing role and not taking such a driving force role, as Downing put it. Policy direction is the other concern. Downing says that investors want to see policy certainty and direction, which takes South Africa down a road, not a road that Venezuela's on, however, but its own road, one to growth. There's also the expropriation without compensation issue. That's a big policy matter that's going to be clouding business confidence for the first quarter as well. So there's a range of issues at play at the moment, Ramah.
Right, one last question for you, Angelo. The ABSA PMI, manufacturing PMI index in December as well, it also essentially ended 9 months of being in contraction territory in December, went back into expansion territory, but only just. And respondents there said they were optimistic about the next 6 months. Why is that?
Well, I spoke to the chief macroeconomist at ABSA late this afternoon, and he confirms to that there is some degree of optimism there. He's saying that there are a few issues behind this. Firstly, manufacturers have seen a pickup in new sales orders. That's largely supported by export sales. Positively, he says that the risk of further escalation of protectionist trade policies also seems to be receding or reducing slightly. Secondly, output levels have also risen moderately. That was going into Q4. Then there was that sharp decline in international oil prices, which had a subsequent knock-on effect on domestic fuel prices, and that seems to be helping on the input cost side in South Africa. But he does remain concerned about the possible effects of load shedding in the very short term, Ramah.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the update. That's Angelo Kopler, then live, of course, in Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, doctors in Zimbabwe, right next door, have ended a 6-week-long strike. They're bringing some measure of relief to President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government. Authorities in Zimbabwe, though, are facing growing labor unrest across a range of sectors as inflation rises. Hard currency shortages continue to persist, and this bond note quasi-currency continues to devalue. CGTN's Farai Mokutuya has the details.
Doctors are back in the wards after getting commitments to improve their working conditions while salary negotiations continue. They, along with teachers and nurses, say their static wages have been outstripped by a rapidly increasing cost of living and are ramping up pressure on the government.
It's the third day of a new school term, but these rural teachers haven't attended any lessons. Instead, they've been camped here outside the Ministry of Finance office, where they vow to stay until their demand to be paid in US dollars has been met.
To try to pacify the rest of employees, government has brought forward their January pay dates, but may need to do more to quell the discontent.
The economy needs to be dollarized. For me, it's inevitable. Secondly, we need to have a rollout situation where the bond note is taken off the market completely. It's not doing us any good. And thirdly, a social contract is needed between labor, between employers and government.
Recent negotiations ended in a stalemate because unions say government isn't being transparent.
No one is giving explanation. People are reading these things in the media. No one is coming openly to say government is unable to raise enough forex to pay its strong workforce in foreign currency. The foreign currency government is getting is earmarked for fuel, for electricity. No one is explaining that. You'll be surprised that once you explain this to the people, people will understand that the government has got no money.
The cash-strapped administration is in a bid to attract foreign capital, but the ongoing challenges could deal its charm offensive a blow on the chin.
No one is going to put money in a country where people spend 8 hours looking for fuel. Someone is putting a notice, wants to go on strike. Someone is demanding forex. Someone is complaining that this government is not consulting.
With inflation at a 10-year high and cash, fuel and some basic commodities in short supply, Zimbabwe is experiencing its worst economic crisis since 2008. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Bit of positive news on the trade front. Egypt's government has scrapped all tariffs on vehicles made in Europe. That's according to a new free trade agreement signed between the North African state and the EU. Here's CGTN's Yasser Kim now taking a look at how the country's auto market is responding to this latest tariff change.
The zero tariffs has pushed down the prices of European cars as dealers flooded the media with their discounts.
The tariff cancellation has dropped prices of cars from 8% to 25%. The 1.4 to 1.6cc engine has a discount of 8 to 10%. Cars above 1.6 and 2.0cc engine have dropped by 25% because the tariffs on this category has gone down by 40%.
There are 12 million vehicles in Egypt. Around 7 million are private cars. 65% are imported and the rest locally assembled. The auto market has been in a recession in the last couple of years, especially after the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, which has shot prices up. And the latest tariff scraps could have a positive effect on the market. To compete with the European-made vehicles, the non-European cars have also started to announce special discounts.
All companies, not just European, have started sending us discounted prices. They want a market share guarantee for the European cars, and this will benefit the customer. In 2019, we will witness high sales of larger models that were very expensive before, but now are competitively priced since tariffs have been removed.
Even the used car market, a significant portion of the overall auto market in Egypt, has been affected by the movement in prices.
Just like you see here, no one is buying. There are no clients. They stopped buying since the new tariffs were announced. They are waiting to compare between the price of new cars after discounts and the used ones.
I want a medium-sized car. I came to check the prices. I'm afraid to buy now and regret it later. I decided to wait a while. Maybe prices of used cars will go down soon.
These developments have been commended by experts.
If we compare with the Turkish market, the car sales in Turkey average around 600,000 to 700,000 vehicles per year. In Egypt, it's only 135 to 140,000. This is way below our capabilities because of the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, which caused prices to rise. But the tariff cancellation could pick the market up and improve sales a bit.
The zero tariffs on European cars seems to be the badly needed shot in the arm that could revive the ailing auto market in Egypt. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
We're still in North Africa, now though in Libya. After a long shutdown due to the country's civil conflict, the country's only truck factory is slowly resuming production. The auto manufacturing sector has been mostly stagnant or half dead over the years, but sector players hope that operations will pick up as the economy there starts to recover.
In the vast assembly hall of Libya Trucks and Bus Company, the country's sole automobile manufacturer, 2 men work on the body of a new bus and a few others inspect a row of truck cabs. Shuttered for 5 years following the 2011 uprising, the factory's reopening in May 2017 with the encouragement of the UN-backed Government of National Accord was a sign of hope.
After 2011, the company was affected like the rest of the country's institutions. Some problems took place, which became a hindrance to production. We knew these circumstances were affecting the manufacturing institutions, but thank God, vehicle companies remained in a better condition. Currently, starting from May 2018, the rate of production is once again picking up speed.
But while it once churned out 5,000 vehicles a year, it now produces only 8 a month. Its clients are mainly Libyan state institutions. The plant was established in 1976 as a joint venture between the Libyan government and Italy's Iveco, which holds a 25% stake. The plant stretches over 66 hectares in Tripoli's suburbs. Before 2011, it employed 1,000 people. Now, it employs only 300.
Libya is a country open to the world. We just want some safety and security, as well as some policies. The problem is not money. We as the private sector cooperate with foreigners through the build, operate, transfer system. We have not given up. I say this to everyone. We, as businessmen, say that we guarantee the future of Libya.
Devaluation of Libya's dinar to 3.9 per dollar from 1.3 last September to curb the black market exchange operations has driven up costs, impeding demand and production at the plant. Boosting the private sector now hinges on the adoption of investment-friendly regulations and improving security. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
A commission of inquiry has revealed that serious human error was the key cause of the collision between a Tunisian vessel and a Cypriot container ship last year, some 28 kilometers north of Cape Corsica. Tunisian authorities say the repairs, compensation and the losses from this incident will run into the millions of dollars. CGTN's Anin Shachi has more from Tunis.
The Commission of International Experts formed to investigate the collision between the CTN's Ro-Ro ship Ulysse and the Cypriot container ship CSL Virginia in October 2018 found that a common human error was behind the collision.
The navigation officer and the CLS Virginia captains were busy on the phone at the time of the accident. The Tunisian officer did not pay attention to the alert from the Cypriot container that was stationed north of the Cape of Corsica in France, as he was busy on the chat room while the other officer was on the check mission.
The Director General of Maritime Transport and Trade Ports added that the losses linked to the Ulysse ship accident are estimated at $8,000 per day. Tunisian maritime authorities will now open tenders through the local procurement system to pick a company that will undertake repairs on the ship.
The ship has been out of service for the past 3 months. It will resume activities in June or July of 2019. The repair costs have reached $12 million and could increase. Insurers on the Ulysses ship will bear the compensation costs, but it will be very expensive.
Tunisian navigation company CGTN has suspended the 3 sailors who posted a video on social media after the incident from duty as they await a court verdict.
The CTN also took disciplinary action against the contract officer, terminating his engagement, as well as that of the watch officer and the officer who steered the vessel from midnight to 4 a.m. These officers and sailors have damaged the reputation of the Tunisian shipping company.
The Director General of Maritime Transport said the insurance companies and the Protection and Indemnity Club will pay for the repairs of both ships and the reimbursement of the cost of cleaning of the polluted coasts and beaches in France as a result of fuel spill from the Cypriot ship.
It's 18:34 GMT, time for another break. Here's what's coming up next. Saudi Arabia plans to cut oil exports by at least 10% this month. And it seems there's no end in sight yet for the US government shutdown.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. Let's focus on the oil market shortly. The OPEC kingpin, the biggest producer within that group, Saudi Arabia, they plan to slash oil exports in January by 10% compared to November's export levels. The kingdom's Ministry of Energy says the world's top crude supply will cut exports to about 7.2 million barrels a day, and it will take another 100,000 barrels per day of output out in February. OPEC and its allies decided last month to cut their overall output by about 1.2 million barrels a day in order to boost prices amid a supply glut and fears that demand would fall. After Brent crude hit about $85 a barrel in early October, prices then nosedived by more than 40% over the following 2 months due to oversupply and fears of a trade war between the United States on one hand and China on the other. Now, speaking of the United States, on the 9th of January, President Donald Trump walked out of a meeting with congressional leaders after Democratic leaders fought back on his border claims and maintained they will not be allocating any scarce taxpayer funds to build a wall on the country's southern border. Mr. Trump later on described the meeting as, quote, a total waste of time. End of quote. Now, constructing the wall has become central to a political showdown between the White House on one hand and an emboldened Democratic Party. CGTN's Nathan King has more from the White House.
Fellow Americans. In a short address to the American people, a lot of claims about the so-called crisis on the Mexican border.
Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs. 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings.
Immigration lawyer Liana Montesinos, herself a refugee, says the U.S. president is wrong.
Trump continues to send this message that the immigrants are coming to kill you, but that is not true. As we know, these are people who are fleeing persecution. These are minor children, and these are people who just want to be able to live in a country and feel safe.
The president's speech was designed to speak directly to the American people. On Thursday, he'll travel to the southern border to press his case further that a wall is the way to address illegal immigration. But the latest polls show most Americans are against giving Trump the $5.7 billion he's demanding to begin construction. Most blame him for the government shutdown, but the wall was a key campaign promise, and his supporters want him to deliver.
I think the motivation that Trump is seeking is for his supporters to inflame their emotions against the immigrant community through false facts and to create this crisis and this fear amongst people and hatred against immigrants. But the truth is, for instance, in my case, I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 11, and I've dedicated my entire life to serve.
Trump's address from the Oval Office has raised the political stakes too. Democrats in the U.S. Congress, who control the cash, gave their own televised rebuttal of his claims. The U.S. government shutdown, now in its third week, for now, shows no signs of ending. In the past, U.S. presidents have used addresses from the Oval Office to calm the fears of a nervous American public in times of crisis. This time, Trump's critics say that he is trying to instill fears into the American people. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
Let's get the latest on the story. Jim Spellman is live in Washington, D.C. with the latest. So, Jim, given Wednesday's walkout, What happens next? Is there any prospect of this crisis actually coming to an end anytime soon?
Ramah, there is simply no end in sight. Reopening the government requires the support of three parts of the U.S. government. The U.S. House of Representatives, controlled by Democrats, the U.S. Senate, controlled by Republicans, and of course, President Donald Trump. So far, Republicans largely united behind Trump, Democrats largely united behind the new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Neither side says they will budge on funding for a border wall. It's not clear if or when the next round of high-level negotiations that include Trump will take place after Wednesday's talks fell apart. On Tuesday, Trump addressed the nation about what he calls a crisis on the southern border, but there's no indication that that speech changed many minds. Today he's visiting the border. No one expects that to change many minds either. So Trump says he's now seriously considering declaring a national emergency at the southern border. He could try to use that authority to build a wall while circumventing Congress, likely by using funds that are earmarked for the U.S. military. Ramah?
Right then, so assuming that the president does go down that path, how exactly would it work in legal terms? But also, strictly speaking, it won't solve the wider funding standoff, so why do it in the long run anyway?
Well, to end the standoff at the moment, the idea is that Trump would vote for the legislation to reopen the government and then declare a national emergency at the border to get his wall. The National Emergencies Act here in the United States came into effect in the 1970s and has been invoked by presidents 58 times. It was used first in 1979 to freeze Iranian assets during the Iran hostage crisis. It has been used immediately after the September 11th attacks in 2001. Later, it was used to address the H1N1 swine flu outbreak in 2009. It has never been used in a situation like this to circumvent Congress over a policy issue. If the president does go this route, it will almost certainly be challenged in court, and there will be major backlash from Democrats against the move. It's not clear if the courts would allow the president to use the National Emergencies Act this way, but it would allow the president to reopen the government without giving up the fight for a border wall. Ramah?
Indeed, game theory permutations are just fascinating here. The House Speaker's plan later this week, as I understand it, is to bring specific funding bills for specific units of the government: Homeland Security, Justice, State, Treasury, and so on. But the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, he's still sticking to his position on not sending any bills that he thinks the president won't sign. So how is this likely to play out?
Right, so House Democrats have vowed to pass a new bill every day for a week, each opening an individual part of the government. As you mentioned, the Senate won't put them up for a vote without the president's approval, and even if they did and the measures passed in the Senate, Trump says he will veto them. So this is mostly a political maneuver by Democrats to put more pressure on Republicans. But the first bill addressing Treasury and the IRS, the tax agency, gained the support of 8 Republicans in the House. As the impacts of the shutdown take a larger toll each day, the Democrats hope they can peel away more Republican support. Will it work? Unclear, but this is something that they feel they can do with no downside, Ramah.
All right, we'll leave it there for the time being. Jim Spillman with the latest there in Washington, D.C. Now, the spokesman of China's Ministry of Commerce has said that the just concluded 3-day talks in Beijing have laid the foundation for resolving the problems between the United States on one hand and China on the other. CGTN's Wang Wei was on the scene and brings us this report.
Representatives from the world's two largest economies met again in Beijing from Monday to Wednesday this week to try to resolve their trade spat. The U.S. delegation was led by Deputy Trade Representative Jeffrey Garish, while the China side was headed by Vice Commerce Minister Wang Shouwen.
Both sides actively implemented the consensus reached by the two presidents. They had comprehensive, in-depth, and detailed communication about trade issues and structural issues. They strengthened mutual understanding and laid a foundation for resolving problems.
Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, who's President Xi Jinping's top economic advisor, made a surprise appearance at the talks. The two sides originally planned to meet for 2 days, but extended the discussions to a third day.
The long negotiations indicate both sides are serious and candid in the talks, and were making efforts to implement the consensus reached by the two presidents.
The White House also released a statement on the talks. It says the aim was to achieve certain structural changes in China, areas covered including forced technology transfers, intellectual property protection, and the cyber theft of trade secrets for commercial purposes. The White House also said the talks focused on China's pledge to purchase a substantial amount of American agricultural, energy, and manufactured goods, and other products and services. This is the first face-to-face meeting since the G20 summit in Argentina. That's when Chinese President Xi Jinping and the U.S. President Donald Trump agreed not to impose new tariffs for a period of 90 days. The U.S. says it won't levy new tariffs on Chinese products until March, while China has suspended additional tariffs on U.S. vehicles. Wang Hui, CGTN, Beijing.
Now, this is a familiar task that's often critical, but it's one that many people often forget, myself included. These things happen. I'm talking about taking prescribed medication. Now, a more durable solution could be based on machine learning. One example is a robot called Pillow. It uses facial recognition to keep track of and dispense medicine to individuals. Pillow can also schedule a health plan and organize video calls with relatives.
Dispense my meds.
With many innovations emerging, the health sector is equally ingenious. Pillow is one of such exciting innovation in the health field. It is a home-based robot designed to remind patients to take their medication. It also educates and tracks their activity.
Sure, here it is. Pillow Health is a healthcare assistant, but it's voice activated, like an Amazon Alexa, if you will. But because it's centered around health, it stores and dispenses medications. But it dispenses only to the right person, because we have a front camera that recognizes the face of the person, and only then Pillow is going to dispense.
It is being referred to as a digital home healthcare companion. The pill dispenser uses algorithms that proactively engage patients by talking to them and answering their questions.
To help keep track of your wellness data, would you like me to show you a snapshot of your day?
The robot is particularly useful with patients with memory challenges, chronic diseases, as well as the elderly.
People forget to take their pills all the time. This is a problem that causes, in the US alone, 125,000 people to die every year. So in order to remember medication, we've built something a little bit different. We've started building a someone in people's home, in people's homes. So Pillow is that someone that's going to wake up, it's going to look for your face and say, "Hey, John, it's now time to take your pill."
While Pillow will never replace the place of human interaction in healthcare, it will reduce many inadequacies experienced in the field.
Sure, let me dispense your pills.
Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Right, then automation to the rescue. Right, then a quick run through commodity prices here for you. Brent crude is back to levels we've not seen since mid-December. It actually did go well over $61 a barrel earlier today. Now, on the 9th, we spoke about the impending oil cuts that OPEC members, including Nigeria, have agreed to. Essentially, some 950,000 barrels of output needs to go offline. What's not clear at the moment is how that squares out with 150,000 barrels of outputs to come in from the Egina offshore field in Nigeria by the end of this month. Is it all condensates? Is it all pure crude? That's a puzzle we'll be trying to solve for a while. Here's what's coming up next. A young Ugandan entrepreneur is cashing in on bamboo and cycling. And the underprivileged get a helping hand from the Egyptian government.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to the program. A group of young Ugandan entrepreneurs have set up a cycling business with bamboo bicycle frames right at the heart of it. They are offering cycling enthusiasts a cheaper, sturdier and greener alternative to ordinary bikes. Hop on as CGTN's Lonela Lipwana takes us for a short ride.
Bamboo may be nature's perfect plant, but a group of young entrepreneurs in Kampala are changing the art of that tale. At a workshop in the heart of the city, Nordin Kasoma is inspecting one of his company's handmade bicycles. While many people cannot believe that bamboo is strong enough to carry someone's weight, Nordin and his team say bamboo is the perfect material to make bicycle frames.
When it comes to the bamboo bicycle and riding, especially on the off-roads, it's really comfortable. One, bamboo is flexible. Due to that flexibility, it gives that kind of shock-absorbing property. When you're riding, especially on the off-roads, the bamboo is soft, tries to absorb the shocks that you're passing through, other than steel or aluminium.
Known as Bugatti Bikes Limited, these young men in this small self-made company recycled damaged steel bikes and replaced the frames with bamboo. Each one of them is handcrafted into a beautiful, unique and highly functional bicycle frame. The bamboo plant is first dried and treated with insecticides for several months before being used. It takes them about a week to assemble a single bicycle.
We get geometrical diagrams of different types of bikes and different sizes. We normally make mountain bikes, city bikes, and travel bikes, and then we have the road bikes, the racing bikes. So every type of bicycle has different geometry and different sizes.
I think it's even a cheaper option, because if you went through importing a carbon frame, the taxes and the like, you suddenly may buy two of these.
The cost of a single bamboo bicycle ranges from about $350 to $450, and that depends on its size and design. Bicycles have been featured in various tournaments for decades, and these young entrepreneurs are hoping that their small factory will someday expand and open doors for bicycle tourism in Uganda. Lonela Lipwana, CGTN.
And finally, Egypt's president has launched a taxpayer-funded household aid program that will run throughout 2019. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has described the program, named it as A Decent Life. It aims to empower the underprivileged and cover, at the very least, their basic needs. Here's CGTN's Adel Makhrouki with the details.
Naming the Egyptian citizen the hero of 2018 for sustaining with the economic burdens, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced an initiative called A Decent Life. The new aid program aims to reach out to the neediest segment of society and help them overcome challenges to cover their basic needs.
The decent life that the president refers to starts with decent housing. Citizens must find an affordable home to live in. The second aspect is to reach out to the people living in the villages. They are in desperate need of health services. There is also a plan to help out orphans to get married.
The Ministry of Social Solidarity provides monthly financial aid for some 12 million Egyptians. In addition, the government provides food stamps and partial power subsidies. Egypt pays around $14 billion annually to fund these services.
We are trying to complement the current aid programs and expand the initiative's outreach. We have a health campaign targeting hepatitis C and other non-communicable diseases. A Decent Life will also target other health issues.
The government is currently holding a quick demographic scan to refine the database of the poorest 32 million Egyptians. Decent Life will start with the most 100 underprivileged villages, which poverty rates are at more than 70%. Aiming to achieve the highest assistance efficiency, the Ministry of Social Solidarity has been holding planning meetings with the biggest 15 NGOs to coordinate their plan of action.
The initiative is pushing the government, the economic establishments and the civil society to coordinate efforts of engaging with public assistance. The NGOs and the government agreed to divide the program into two main kinds of services.
Decent Life aims to create more jobs through offering loans and opportunities for citizens to start their micro-enterprises. By fulfilling the basic needs of the poorest segment of society, Egypt is hoping A Decent Life would decrease their reliance on the government. Cairo believes the initiative will help speed up its economic development plan. Adel Makhrouki, CGTN, Cairo.
Quick run through the currencies as we wrap up the program here for you. So positive inflation data came out of Egypt today with a 370 basis point fall in December to 12% in urban inflation. Very good news there. Now the fall though, especially given the fact that price hikes for fuel and electricity have generally been baked into the data now, that's led some to ask if the central bank might cut rates later in 2019. Remember, the CBE's target range is 13% plus or minus 300 basis points on either side. Those are your currencies, and that is this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, I'd like to hear your thoughts on everything you've seen here, including, of course, me being tied for just a moment there. All the details are on your screens at the moment. Thank you very much for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next.